It's you at home can't tell, it's just a little warm in here. I'm sure we're in between the period of coolness in Vermont and summer in Vermont. So in that transition period, the air conditioners aren't in yet. The difference being in Vermont, usually one air conditioner does it. When I do trips down in Florida, we need an industrial truck air conditioner backed up to the airplane. Let's see, so we've been doing flybys of world religions and worldviews by loosely off this book by Tim Baker of a different title, but say why? Why does this stuff matter? Why don't we just read the Bible? All we need to do is read the Bible and that'll take care of everything. And I am a big fan of reading the Bible. In fact, my one pastor said, no Bible, no breakfast. Since I'm big on breakfast, I like to read the Bible first thing in the morning. That way before I get busy. And it sets the day. I believe that if you study a little bit of the Bible every day for your whole Christian life, your whole life, that input will have the effect of these worldviews. It programs, and this is literally true, not just spiritually, symbolically, but it's true chemically. Your brain will rewire itself for habit patterns. That's why habit patterns usually take, 4 or 5 weeks till they set in, because your brain is rewiring itself. And if it's something agonizing, like eating kale, you have to brainwash yourself into saying that this is something that tastes good. My daughter is big on, I think it's Quiana or whatever that. Quinoa! I apologize. I can never get it right by rolling her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, dear. No matter how much I eat that, I ain't going to change my mind. My brain will not rewire itself to say that's something good. But farro tastes good, actually. So, ideas. Why are they also important? Well, for the review I wrote down that a worldview is the way to look at things. It's a filter. It's like a processing device. Come on in. Oh, it's fine. People make noise, then I'm thinking, that everyone's participating, So, some believe that we don't need to understand worldviews because, you don't need to know about the ways you look at the world, especially religion, because these ideas, these religions, doesn't really matter in the real world. Just live your life. Don't get all bent out of shape thinking, how do I think? Why do I think that way? Just do it. All this stuff, the stuff you Christians just want to argue about. That's all. Besides, religion is all the same anyways, so why study it when it's all the same? But rather, take a view that ideas have consequences, tremendous consequences. Ideas matter. Life decisions are made by your worldview. If your worldview is that I have absolute total right to my property, so I don't care if I'm in downtown city, I'm having a herd of pigs. I don't know what pigs are called, whether they're a collective or a flock, or I don't know what pigs are, but I'm going to have pigs, I'm never going to cut my grass. Well, that worldview affects how you live. And your neighbors will say that has great consequences, tremendous consequences. Or if you happen to have dogs that like to howl 25 hours a day, that'll have tremendous, but it's my right, that's my worldview. So our decisions are made, but we really think of life. For example, the abortion issue, I often get the response, don't shove your religion on me. You know, if you don't like religion, you don't like abortion, that's fine, then you don't have one. But don't take that right away from me. You don't have that right to force your views on me. Okay? But then, you take one step later, when you come to LGBTQ, the opposite happens. You are not allowed to have your own thoughts, nor less have a view. You must believe what we say is the correct view in LGBTQ. You must clap for it. You must agree with it. And you may not disagree, nor less think there should be any type of prohibitions upon it. No. So, in other words, what's good for the goose is not good for the gander, because in one sense you say, don't push your views, but in another sense, we will push this view. So this is where the idea that ideas have consequences. No, and I must make the point that Christians do not, for the great most part, there are exceptions, but every Christian I run into does not believe that we should spit on, disdain LGBTQ people. No, in fact, Jesus ate with sinners. The dredges of society, that society thought, in that day, he ate with them. He was with them. But yet he also said, go and sin no more. So there is the view I think Christians have. So I want to clarify that in case someone thought that I was being hateful. But we were talking about atheism, and then we started on agnosticism, and that's where we're going to pick up. Agnosticism being no, Gnosticism knowledge. So it's, can I say this? I wonder if I can say this. I guess I'll say it. To me, it's the difference between raising boys and raising girls. Raising my daughters, conversation was very involved and lengthy. Good deal of expression. To me, my idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, is boys tend to be, what'd you do today? Nothing. Did you get any homework? Nothing. What do you want to do? Nothing. You know, that's the whole conversation for the day. Boys tend to be distinctly different. And I realize in ideas and worldviews, just saying there's a difference in the gender is now taboo. But no knowledge, nothing. So we're picking it up as agnostics believe it is impossible for us to know if God exists. It's the atheist says there is no God. Like there is no purple swans. So there is no God. But agnosticism tends to say, I don't know. I don't know if there's a God. And yes, some are perfectly happy with not knowing. They feel that lets them off the hook of responsibility of finding out. But agnosticism basically says, we don't know. And it takes a couple different slants. And in a course that's trying to simplify everything, I have to make it complicated. So Baker says there's agnostic believers and agnostic atheists. And we have to be careful when he uses the word believer, not in the Christian sense of language, but in the sense that these agnostic believers They believe God exists, but there's no way to know this God that exists. You can't know Him. And under that category, I think there's two types of the agnostic believer. The first is the Gnostics who accept the possibility that a God exists, but hold that we can't know about Him. Just can't know. He may be there, but I can't know about Him. And then there's the agnostics who accept the possibility that God exists, but we absolutely can't know anything about Him. It's not possible to know anything about Him. What's the difference? The one is saying, for all practical purposes, you can't know anything because there's so much you don't know. And the other one says, there's absolutely nothing you can know. No, not at all, not at all. And then we go back and there's the agnostic atheist. The agnostic atheist says that they're sure that God doesn't exist because you can't know Him. And what's the difference between that and an atheist? Yeah, it's sometimes a little play on words. Some atheists would be offended if you called them agnostic, and some agnostics would be offended if you called them atheists. But what matters to me, if one says, I don't know because of the limited access to knowledge, my limitations as a person, or as Joe Smith, if you say that, I'm okay with that. Because the focus is on you, not knowing. And for all intents and purposes, I say to my friends in this PhD thing I'm doing, the more I read, the less I know. And that's technically not correct, but it feels that way. Just like the more I read, oh my goodness, there's more and more and more levels. Like, I feel stupider and stupider the more I read and study. Okay, that's the thing about me, my problems. And it can be Kevin Harold because I have to read a page usually 2-3 times before I get it. And if it's Hegel, I have to read it 16 times before I decide I can't get it. But if you don't know who Hegel is, don't read him. Or Gadamer, don't read him. Because I said my friend that Gadamer starts a sentence on page 400 and he ends it on page 405. One long continuous sentence. Oh my goodness. The person who proofreads my papers before I send them to my professors, I could just see her just freaking out. She's actually my friend's daughter, and I appreciate her. Just ouch. Okay, but if you say, I don't know because there's no way to know God, because God is, who He is, or it is, or she is, and we are humans, and we're finite, and the focus then is upon knowledge itself, not upon me getting the knowledge, it's upon knowledge. And thus, you can't know God because it's not possible to know knowledge. And these guys, Hume and Kant, they came up with ideas that you really can't know reality. You think you know what reality is, but this may not really exist because it's all something you perceive. And since your perception is faulty, we really can't know reality. Really? I mean, you took the ball of wax and you ran so far with it. You can't know reality at all? And thus you can't know God because you know, blah, 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 blah. Well, my answer is, do you not, if the elevator doors are open and no elevator there, would you bank on your ability to know things, or would you just step into that big open hole and die? My point is, you wouldn't die. The same way with bridges, fire. If you wake up and your house is on fire, you're going to roll over and say, well, that may not be true. Well, it may or may not be true in your sense, but am I going to risk dying a horrible death? Well, I just don't know. In the same way, I don't know if God, because of knowledge, you can't really know anything. Really? You're going to stop there? You're not going to search? You're not going to try to find out whether there is God, who He is, what He is like, what He requires? You're just going to go, I'm good to go. One pastor church, he said his youngest daughter was very apprehensive about school. So him and his wife walked her down to the corner to get on the bus. And as the bus came, she was getting more nervous. The pastor says, let us pray with you. And the bus arrived, and she was going up the stairs. She turns and goes, I'm good. I'm good. If you know her daughter, you know that sounds just like her. But, for an agnostic, I'm good. I don't need to find out about God. I'm good. I'm good. My life is fine. I'm doing okay. I'll cross that bridge when I die. Maybe too late. Maybe too late. I'll cross that bridge when I get typhoid. I'll cross that bridge when I get cancer. I won't do anything about it now. Really? Really? No. I think as agnostic, it would be irrational for you not to try to find out. So, how does one become agnostic? Ideas. What's the attraction? Well, he said the attraction is, in one sense, it gets you off. I don't have to worry about it. I just don't know. But in another sense, it can bring about great intellectual pursuits. In fact, I have tremendous respect for sincere agnostics, and I enjoy talking to agnostics. Because as a Christian, I went through a period of almost, you might want to almost call it Gnosticism, not knowing. I couldn't figure things out. Great questions, great doubts. So that's good. Now, he says the goal of Gnosticism is to try to find out if God exists. That would be a sincere agnostic. I'm afraid, though, a good deal of them use it as an excuse not to search. What does it look? How does Gnosticism look like Christianity? Well, he says they think a lot about God, but they don't know if He exists. They really don't have any thoughts what God is like, so they don't have anything to share. I think he's taking the optimistic view of agnosticism. But how is it different from Christianity? He says they don't believe in God because they don't think it's possible, either intellectually or practically. Well, I just can't figure it out, so I'm not going to bother trying. Okay, so what I didn't know, he says that most agnostics have some sort of fellowship. They join a Unitarian Universalist church. Is there a Unitarian Universalist church in our community? Do you all know? Yes. Unitarian Universalist church was actually two separate movements in history that came together. Unitarians basically say there is only one being, one godlike being. Definitely not a Trinity, definitely not three, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. No, one. Universalists basically believe that all dogs go to heaven. Everyone's going to heaven. If there is a heaven, we're all going. So they united together And the way that works out is that might be insulting. Very, I would say open-minded. Very, very broad on the parameters. Very, very, very broad. Very socially minded, but very broad on the parameters. What is some people who believe in them? You can tell this is written about 10 years ago by the people they list in these things. Is Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons. He's agnostic. Sarah McLachlan, the singer. Dave Matthews. Uma Thurman, if you remember, more an actress from my day, agnostic. So that's basic agnosticism. How would we relate to an agnostic? How do you think you would relate to them? Besides going up saying, you don't like the Bible, you're a no good, rotten, pagan person, I spit on thee. You gotta use King James. You know, get out of my sight, I rebuke thee. Besides that way that doesn't work, how would you be respectful and relate to agnostic? Any ideas? What's that thing?
Tell them that doubt is not what sends you to hell. Doubt is a healthy thing. You know, there's no reason that you should doubt. I mean, there's no reason that you should not doubt. You know, to question is not a bad thing. How do you know, though, if you do come into contact with the truth? How would you know if it was the truth? What would you use as your criterion to ascertain truthfulness? Because I assume you're looking for truth. I assume that that's something you would be looking for in life, was to find the truth. So how would you know that truth if it came upon you?
Great. There's 3 parts. Love that. First, you asked a question instead of made a proclamation. Secondly, you found common ground. Hey, it's okay to have doubts. If my pastor wasn't standing there, I would say, it's okay to not totally agree with the pastor. You're allowed 0.0002% disagreement with the pastor. Joking, but I mean, it's okay to question God. He's not going to throw a thunderbolt at you for having sincere questions. Now, if your question is to get out of something, you know, I know none of you have this, but I heard of families, remote families, that had children that would question endlessly, so they would rather question their parents for an hour instead of taking 2 minutes to take the trash out. Why do I have to take the trash? What is the existential benefit of me taking the trash out? Well, you always make me take the trash out every 4th week. You know, I'm not talking about that type of question. And the other part he did was praise them. Agree with them where you can. You know, sometimes Christians feel, if I agree with a non-Christian, then, everything falls apart and they won't even think about Jesus. I have to truly crush them into powder and destroy their every little thought. No. Great. I tell Muslims, I am really impressed how dedicated you are to God, how committed you tend to be as a people in your family situation. However, there's some things that I disagree with and I think are important. Period. Letting them to go, well, what are those things? Now we have a conversation instead of blah, 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 blah. Are you ready to accept Jesus? Blah, 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 blah. You know, I felt that was the way you witness, and that's the way I raised my children, by lecturing for an hour. I didn't see the little eyes roll back into their heads, you know, from sheer agony from Dad going blah, blah, blah. Great. Just ask questions. Listen to what they're saying, right? Don't feel that you have to know all the answers. but encourage the agnostic to look for answers. Why would you not want to know the real deal about things? Why would you not want to know the truth? Let's move on to naturalism. If you've never listened to any of my classes before, naturalism is not like where I've been. I've been all over the world in my career, and some beaches were very naturalistic. Bathing suits were not utilized. You're thinking, I know maybe the guy's thinking, yeah, no, please let me get across this beach as quick as possible. I want to just get out of here. Ah! You know, my first spiritual mentor, my stepmother said, can you say this in church? I'll say it anyways. I just seem to say whatever I think anyway. If we all went around naked at work, there'd be less affairs. Thanks for that visual image. Yeah. But that's not what I mean by naturalism. Naturalism, he says, Baker says, has its roots in literature and theater. What? The natural 19th century plays were often not detailed and actors not exact. Naturalistic theater came along and pushed the acting envelope. Things had to be exactly like they would have been if you weren't watching a play. It had to be totally realistic. What? That's your idea of naturalism? So I don't know where he got that or what he's thinking, but I forgot to bring Nancy Pearcey's book on art. Great Christian writer, and she goes through the history of art. It's been my experience in evangelicalism that art is poo-poo. Oh, no. In fact, there was, not Quakers, I don't want to insult them if it was that, I forget who it was, believed that the church had to be as plain as possible. No pictures. Very little architecture. Even at all. Everything was plain. Because that detracted from God. Because they were super critical. I think it was the iconic controversy. Probably Lee would know that. They were super critical of the cathedrals. If you've ever been in a cathedral, I've been in quite a few in Europe, in Spain. Oh my goodness. I tell you, I felt closer to God just being in there. The majesty. When I took my wife to Paris, so I took her to get French baking lessons. I didn't tell her. We showed up in Paris. Hey, by the way, I scheduled this. That did not go over as well as I thought it would. Because, I didn't realize my wife's a baking chef, and now she's going to go in front of other famous baking chefs. Oh, I said, I didn't think I was putting you. But she went, and she really liked it. And she made some good things for me to eat. And ultimately, that's the test of all baking reality. Do I get something out of the deal? But anyways, we went to Notre Dame. Oh my goodness. The sculptures on the outside. I showed a picture to my friend. They have the martyrs on the outside of the church. I don't know if you're familiar. And one guy standing there holding his head in his hands. It was to show that it cost a price to be a Christian. And the work inside the woodwork was so beautiful, just so amazing. I tell you, I cannot believe that all that woodwork, all those scenes, was just guys getting paid to do a job. I just think they were expressing appreciation to God, or all for God, and getting paid. But just the marvelly burned up. Because Notre Dame caught fire. Oh, you walk in there, You just don't go, hey, this is nice. It's like you almost want to kneel. So, the naturalism, Christian art. The whole thing of the gold leaf backgrounds, the halos, the different ways, these all have a symbolic purpose in Christianity. It's not a bad thing. You know, if you study the history, it's like our Professor Lee, he always, before he sings, the singer guy talks about the history of tradition in the church, you know, which at first I was like, what's the singer guy doing talking about that stuff? Because all the other churches I've been in, the worship leader was very young, very contemporary, and they just focused on the singing, you know. There was a joke about contemporary worship music. I like contemporary worship music, but there was a joke about something about, in the joke, they repeated the same line 6 times, you know, so whatever. But naturalism in this sense, if you've been in my classes, you know I've beaten this to death. There's materialism. Materialism says what? Does anybody remember? Anybody?
Only matter, that's it.
Only matter. No, I'm sorry. There's only matter. This is all there is. Oh, Pastor's only kicking the chair. This is it. This is it. Nothing else. Naturalism says only matter matters. There can't be anything but electrons, stuff. You are just a chemical machine. That's what naturalism says. That's all you are. Ladies, when your boyfriend, husband said, I love you. Oh, I love you more than anything. You are so beautiful. I look at you, I see so. I say that to my wife almost every day. And she just swoons. She goes, what do you want? But anyway, when they say that, it's just chemicals fizzing in their head. There really is no such thing as some ultimate love and all that. It's just your brain doing stuff. That's all there is. Wow. I bet romance is a high thing in your life. I mean, that love you feel for your children, or even more so your grandchildren, that's just your brain fizzing. Their really only purpose is to carry on the lineage. That's all they're good for. Wow. I feel so much happier, don't you, knowing that? That's naturalism. It's an almost religious-like propagation of materialism. Naturalists almost entirely are evolutionists because there is nothing else besides this. There is no metaphorical, supernatural realm. But then the problem is, and I've been over this time and time again, if you really want to go deeper, you can look all the other 3,000 videos, but essentially, naturalism is limited. It limits itself. How does it deal with love, justice, mercy, principles of math? It can't, because it doesn't believe there's anything but us. So they have to explain those away. The thoughts you feel about mercy and justice, that's just some higher evolved thing going on in your head, which I find irrational because in Darwinian theory, the stronger prey on the weaker. But now, that is tremendously bad. Well, a little note for you. Christianity believed that from the get-go. Way, way back in Roman times, Christianity was against the stronger preying on the weaker for the benefit of the stronger. But now they make it sound like only this movement now embraces that. But have you met anybody who's naturalistic, who just believes all we are worm food when we die and there's no God, absolutely no God? Have you met any of those who had a harsh view toward love toward their children? Have you met anyone? You have? Oh, because usually I find most people care very much about their children or their grandchildren. They get a little, the big tough biker guy will get a little soft spot for his little daughter. How do they explain that? If all we are is this, how do they explain those things? Compassion, mercy. And that's what I think the explanation is. Frank Turek, you ever heard of Frank Turek? Very smart guy. He's from Jersey, so he talks like he's from Jersey. And when he answers questions at college gatherings with young people, he answers the way a Jersey person would answer. So somebody goes, oh, he's awful abrasive. No, he's Jersey. That's a affliction or a condition for those of us from Jersey. But it's called, he wrote a book, Stealing from God. Did you ever hear the phrase, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious? You're stealing from God. You're stealing from theism. So you want the cake and you want to eat it too. No, if you're loyal to the T, to naturalism, love, justice, mercy is not real. It's made up. You should be a Wall Street predator. You should be a superior, you should be Nietzschean. Will to power. That's what you should be if you were loyal to naturalism. And I know that might be extremely insulting, and I'm not trying to be insulting, but I am trying to point out, if you were honest to what you believe and didn't steal from theism, this is what would be. So, tell me, since you seem to have known someone like that, what was your experience like in talking to them?
One-sided.
One-sided? You didn't let them talk?
No, they didn't let me talk.
Oh, that's my wife. I'm just harassing her. You know, I missed her the last couple of weeks, so I needed someone to pick on. And, I started picking on Jackie. She gave me that look over the glasses. See, parents who wear glasses have an advantage over you parents who don't wear glasses. Because, my favorite line to my children was, Dad, I hate when you make that noise. Usually that came when I heard brilliantly fashioned, logical thinking, like, I'm 16 years old. Why can't I go to a college party where there's no adult supervision? I don't see what's wrong with that. Of course, son, if I had a son, I will buy you a brand new GTO 300 horsepower car when you're 16 and let you drive it by yourself. Of course I'll do that. No! Did you see the first Transformer movie? Boys, when they first get their license, should have a beat-up old Vega. If you don't know what a Vega is, or a Pinto, that will barely get above 10 miles an hour. You have to! I'll get hate mail now. Okay. Modernism. How are we doing? 8 minutes. So we can start with modernism. You've heard this one before because I ranted about postmodernism. Professor Lee is writing a 300-volume series book on postmodernism. Right, Lee? Kinda. Yeah, there's always the professor's view of the volume you should be able to produce, And then there's the student's view, and the never the twine shall meet, except in my case it was always inverted. Why can't I hand in a 40-page paper? I know you have 20 other students and you have to read all them, but why not? You know. But anyways, modernism. Tim Baker said modernism started when a bunch of scholars wanted to reinterpret the Bible in a scientific way in the 19th century. Yeah. He says Pope Pius X called it modernism in 1907. He deemed it a heresy, and then he required that all clergy take an anti-modernist oath. I don't know if that's true, but modernism certainly has come about in history for those in the church that believe everything is just cycling. You know, there's nothing new in history. It's just the same old thing. No, I profoundly disagree with you. There is key points in history that shift and change things dynamically, the way people think. For example, in our time, it seems to be happening every other Tuesday now. Things are just so accelerated in new ways of thinking. But Walter Elwell equates modernism with the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment was extremely pivotal in Western thought, not Eastern thought. And sometimes I fail to point out there's Western thought and there's Eastern thought. And I'm going to end on this. Eastern thought took a distinctly different tack in thinking than Western thought. Eastern thought basically adheres to the both and philosophy. West, it used to be the either or. In other words, in the East, it's all about synergism. Individual thought and individual truth is not as important as the whole. And you can see this in a lot of Oriental Asian cultures. It's all about conformity and unity of thought. So, contradictory things can come together and both be true at the same time, even though they contradict, because of the Eastern philosophy. And then there's Western philosophy. We're going to come back to modernism next week, and because I'm not going to rush. Can't think of anything else. Was there any questions? Now that I skillfully allowed only 1 minute.
Universalism.
Universalism, yes.
They believe in a higher being.
I don't know that I answer exactly. It's very, like I said, open-ended on defining definitional things, right? Because everyone goes to heaven, all dogs go to heaven, so it'd be hard to nail down.
Higher plane for a higher being.
Anyway, do you ever remember that movie with, what was the comedian? Oh, he's funny, but he was very vulgar in the beginning. The woman, he pretended to be a mother. The woman, pie in the face.
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Huh? Mrs. Doubtfire. What was that guy?
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams. You remember the movie he made? His wife died, and he went
When
after.
things may come. When
What?
things may come.
What things may come?
When-
That view is the view of everyone gets to define their own heaven.
Yes.
Okay. Father, we thank you. I should be saying thank you for summer, for those who like summer, but I'm sweating. I don't like summer, Lord, and I thank you for winter except for the month of February, Lord. Thank you, though, that you're there. Thank you that you have revealed yourself to us. You don't let us hanging out in the dark. You have told us stuff. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.